Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for Workload Automation in an Era of Cloud, Analytics, Enterprise Mobility, DevOps, and Big Data. My name is Raleigh Gould, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Torsten Volk, Research Director at Enterprise Management Associates. Torsten has over 10 years managing highly complex IT projects within the virtualization, cloud, and custom software application development realm. His previous work has consisted of helping national and international organizations like the World Bank and Cricket Communications evaluate and identify the business value of emerging enterprise technologies. And without further ado, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to our featured speaker, Torsten Volk. Torsten?
Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for the introduction, Raleigh. And as the title says, this research is really all about taking a look at the impact of those modern disciplines of enterprise IT on job scheduling. By the way, I will actually start referring to job scheduling as workload automation, simply due to the much more dynamic character of this discipline that is demanded by all of those new kinds of IT, enterprise IT projects that we are working with today. And to the right, as a quick introduction, you can see the EMA maturity model for workload automation. That model was built in 2009, and it shows basically at the time we were at the very bottom in that red area, in that area where it says chaotic, where we had lots and lots of different operating systems, schedulers, and scripts, and application schedulers, all kinds of different things that we had then. And today we move up and consolidate those schedulers so that we really can align job workflows much better with business requirements. And from there, we can think about the integration with process automation software, business dashboards, BIA automation, event correlation, and so forth, so that we make workload automation a lot more proactive and a lot more connected to other systems within the data center. And in the next step, we can talk about leveraging analytics for dynamic thresholding and also elastic hybrid cloud resources for optimal load balancing. So once we are there, workload automation is truly tied to the business and should not have any issues accommodating today's rapid sequence of new projects. So you can see at the very top is where we need to be in workload automation. And the results of this research study will really show us where exactly we are today and what are the most essential pain points and next steps that were identified by our peers, by your peers, obviously, to better leverage their workload automation software. The study itself will be available in early September. And finally, before we jump right into the study results, I would like to thank our sponsors, ORSIP, Cisco Systems, IBM, and Stone Branch for making this study possible in the first place. This first slide shows the source of today's much increased workload automation requirements. New projects are initiated by business units. Those business units and their developers are generally seen as the culprits for increased complexity in workload automation. You can also see big data take second place, and it's obviously just another project type that comes from the business unit, but we wanted to see separately how big data projects rank, and you can see 41% of companies name those projects as important when it comes to explaining complexity in job scheduling. Long story short, there is a tremendous agreement by the people who actually have to do the work, the job schedulers, the designers, the operators, all of those people who are working on workload automation and job scheduling are working with the actual tools, that this complexity is rapidly increasing because of projects that are coming down the pike from business units. So this complexity increase has to be handled somehow, and adding more scheduling staff is typically not an option. So at the end of the day, it is all a zero-sum game. Every dollar that I spend on keeping the lights on, I cannot spend for innovation. So let's take a quick step back, and I promise I'll make this short, but it is very important. We need to take a look at challenge that we had in this study. In every study on workload automation, you have this one key challenge, and that is to reach the correct people to ask all of those very specific questions. And what we did was we had, when you look to the left, I didn't count them, it's probably 12, 13, 14 questions that we asked them, whether they complete a specific duty that's related to workload automation. And if they answered at least 3 questions positively, so they did at least 3 of those things that you can see to the left, then they were included in the study sample. In addition, we needed an executive perspective so that we could also see how far CTOs and IT VPs and IT directors in general perceive workload automation challenges, so that we can basically contrast that perception to the people who actually do the work. You can see how the study sample is constituted. To the right, you can see we have 62% of people who do the work. We have 17% CTOs and CIOs, and the rest are higher-level IT people. IT operations people, I should say. So this next slide shows a little bit of the divide between C-level and the people who actually do the work. And you can see that the satisfaction level of C-level guys is significantly higher compared to the operators who do the work. And this is not only true for those 3 categories that you can see here on this slide. This is true across workload automation in general. And it's an ongoing topic in workload automation, that the operators and the designers and the schedulers are not sufficiently able to relay their issues and their concerns to the higher level IT executives and basically advocate for themselves and make a sufficient business case to improve the situation of workload automation in the organization. Also important, the relationship between company size and satisfaction. And we find that larger companies are generally a little bit less satisfied, as you can see, and that results simply from the increased complexity of larger data center environments and the additional workload automation requirements that are caused by this complexity. And you can see that it's not an overwhelming trend. The differences are not that big, but it's consistent, and there's a significant correlation between satisfaction and company size throughout the study. One of the most interesting, and I want to call it really spectacular findings of the study, is the relationship between maturity and the way people in organizations feel the pain in job scheduling. Basically, what we did is we took a bunch of factors based on our maturity model, and you can see them to the left. We took those and created a proxy variable that scored companies higher that had more of those things that you can see to the left: central workload management, central infrastructure management, self-service, health and performance monitoring. All of those things, the more a company had in place, the higher we scored them on our maturity scale. And then we went and created thresholds so that we had, in the end, 3 different levels of maturity. And you can see those to the right. There should actually be percentages. There are no percentages on the slide, but I can tell you the percentages are 32% high maturity, that orange is 32, 49% is medium, which is that green piece of the pie, and 19% is low maturity. So the spectacular thing about this was really the incredible correlation between those maturity levels and the way people responded to the questions across big data, DevOps, mobile management, all of those questions. The more mature, or the different maturity levels answered those questions extremely similarly. So what we can do with that information is we basically see, as companies progress from low maturity to medium maturity to high maturity of workload automation, their worldview also changes, their perspective on job scheduling also changes along those lines. So we can basically anticipate those companies that are still in the low maturity piece of the pie will run into the same issues that those companies that are already orange or green have already gone through or will go through shortly. So this helps us a lot predict future pain points of customers in general. And one thing that we needed to rule out was that maturity is just a proxy variable. Maturity is a proxy variable, but that maturity actually coincides with company size. And that's why we did this little model here, where we see the 3 levels of maturity, level 1, 2, 3, and we see the different company sizes in the rows of that table. And you can see I circled the 4, and there are also blue in the background. So at the 95% confidence level, those coincide with company size, those maturity levels, but only in those 3 cases. And there's all the other cases that you can see in this mosaic in this table where it doesn't coincide. So overall, there's no significant correlation between company size and maturity. The correlation is really between those individual maturity factors and maturity, which is exactly what we were after when we designed the study. Here's one interesting chart as well, and again, it goes in line with maturity. You can see the average number of schedulers that companies are using, and you see that only 37% have this degree of consolidation that I was showing in the maturity model. So 37% of companies have only 1 scheduler. 24% have 2, 15% have 3, and then interesting is the last 24% have 4 or more schedulers, and you can see there's even companies that have 18 schedulers. So thinking back to the maturity model from the beginning, you can see that at the very least a quarter of organizations is fragmented, and it's not even at that middle stage, at that stage that you saw in orange in terms of consolidation. And by definition, if you're not consolidated in your workload environment, you have a much harder time managing jobs along the lines of the business. So consolidation is one of the big topics. And that also goes in line with the use of scripts. And you can see here that scripts are still pervasive in the organization. 79% are using scripts, and the reason for using scripts is cost and modularity. Modularity simply means that it's quicker and easier to just write a script instead of going and using your workload automation software that you should really be using to get things done. So when I talked about spectacular, what I meant was really this chart, where you see we have, again, the maturity, and then we have the willingness of companies to move to a new workload automation tool, to basically go through this excruciating migration process that it takes to go from one tool to a tool that you think you like better. So 30% we found are considering that move, which is a number that honestly is higher than I personally would have thought. But, it's still only 30%. Now, the interesting piece is when you look to the right. That chart shows that 56% of the organizations that are in maturity level 3, that are the most mature in our study sample, 56% of those organizations are looking for a new job scheduler, for a new workload automation vendor. And I think that is a pretty tremendous fact. And it also shows that, we always hear this, that the market is kind of saturated, that companies are not actually looking to change, that it's more, trying to get the new startups to understand that workload automation is important. But no, it's actually a lot of companies, a lot of organizations feeling sufficiently in pain that they are looking to change. And when we take a look at what this pain really is, we find cost very much at the top of this chart, and we'll break this down a little bit further. And then there's a bunch of other requirements, training requirements, upgrades, and SLA management that are underneath, that are coming in at second, third, and fourth. But they're all still going hand in hand with cost and with this requirement to really consolidate your workload environment. So now, what companies want and what they ask for, and I'll make this slide very, very quickly, very short. Companies ask for a new way of managing workload automation, of making it less complex. And the reason for changing workload automation vendors, the reasons you can see on this slide. And it starts with change management, and it's all the way, change management is all the way at the top, right above better auditing capabilities, and both of those reasons really go hand in hand, and they are a response to this constantly rising pressure that you get from developers and from the business unit to give them what they need quicker. And number three, we have high availability, which is, interesting because it's not exactly something modern that we would have expected to rank that high. But companies still are having issues in terms of high availability of their job scheduler. And then we have problems with root cause analysis, which again goes hand in hand with the need to reduce complexity. And also 1/3 of organizations find mobile access important enough to change vendors, which is interesting, also something I wouldn't have expected. And easier workflow design and easier management of server upgrades and easier agent management are not far behind. When we look at the chart to the right, we see companies, when they have decided what they want, when they have decided that they are going to a new scheduler, what they want to achieve from a strategic perspective, and it's mainly OpEx and CapEx savings that are at the top of this list. And then come ease of use and ease of deployment. So in general, we want to make our life easier so that we can better manage all of those projects that are getting pushed down from the business unit. And before I actually jump into all of those projects that are getting pushed down and how they individually influence workload automation, I just want to briefly look at the key reasons for not migrating to a new scheduler. And to look at this chart, I would recommend to start from the bottom, because the really interesting number is at the bottom, where the red arrow is here. And only 19% of people said that they are not migrating, basically, that they are staying with their tool because there are no better tools. So that means that 81% of companies believe there are better tools out there, but they feel so locked into what they currently have. They feel it's so difficult to migrate. They have political reasons, basically, I have millions and millions of dollars of sunk cost in that scheduler, and I'd have to have a good explanation for my boss to tell them that we spent more money to basically get a better system, even though I've already spent so much money on making the system better, and it's still not what I really want it to be. Very interesting. Look at this chart from the bottom, as I said. But now let's jump right in and take a look at the impact of big data on workload automation. You can see workload automation software serves as a business process integration hub for big data projects. So basically, the workload automation software extracts the data in regular intervals and shovels the data to where it can be used and transformed and analyzed. And then after that, the data is stored in a data warehouse. That's a very basic flow. And then the process begins again. And the better I can manage, the tighter I can manage this process, the more often I can refresh this data, the more data sources I can include in this data, the more my business unit can draw advantage from big data. And in the middle of all of this is job scheduling, is workload automation. So by definition, this is a whole new set of requirements that makes life more difficult for job schedulers. But if done right, it brings a tremendous impact for the entire organization. So by deduction, that means that job scheduling has a tremendous business impact. It's actually a really good argument if you're arguing for improving your current job scheduling situation. There is a direct business impact of job scheduling and your competitive situation. And a lot of even IT executives need to better understand that impact. And here's another interesting slide, and that shows also a big problem that we're having. And you can see only 43% of big data projects are centrally managed by IT operations. And having those projects managed by business units instead means that it's much harder to ensure proper operation and consistent operation. And again, there we have our consolidation argument. We don't want business units to operate their own schedulers and to manage their own business-critical applications. We want to pull this all into job schedulers. And here's the confirmation for what we've always believed. It is that big data projects radically increase workload automation complexity and resource requirements, and in general, the difficulty of managing service level agreements. And again, it's interesting to look at this from the bottom, where you can see that only 12% of organizations believe that big data has no impact on workload automation. So mainly the people who actually are in the trenches and have to do the work are very aware of this increase of complexity, and they are really looking to leadership, to IT leadership, to receive better tools to handle this complexity and to be treated according to their business critical role. So the none of the above, I can tell you that I don't have a slide right now, but a large share of those are the executive group with no hands-on experience. So the requirements that result from this are shown on this slide. So what do people want? They want deeper integration with big data and analytics and BI tools out of the box. They want a central dashboard where they can better see how data flows, the different data streams in that chart that I showed you. They want more transparency in general. They want more adapters and connectors for more business applications so that they can easier plug their business applications into their workload automation tool and manage the process. Okay, now let's take a look at analytics, which is a tool that makes the organization manage this complexity easier. And this was kind of the opening question from our study project. You can see that 22% of companies believe that their workload automation department is absolutely business aware. Another 39% believe that the workload automation department is kind of business aware, and the rest is not really all that optimistic about workload automation guys knowing anything about the business. Very interesting numbers, I think. And really, 81% of respondents believe that predictive analytics, and this you can actually see on the next chart, 81% of respondents believe that predictive analytics can make workload automation more efficient and more aligned with the business. So the 81% is 24% plus 57% in case you're wondering. And you can see the rest, the 16 and the 2 and the 1, they believe that analytics really doesn't help you with being more business aware. So in general, there is a large degree of agreement that analytics can help us. And here are the reasons why respondents invest in analytics in a workload automation context. And as you would have guessed, it is really a lot about operational efficiency. And security also goes in line with this because it simply means that analytics helps you avoid security and also compliance that you can see at number 3. Analytics helps you avoid security and compliance issues in today's complex workload automation requirements. So if you have an analytics system that automatically monitors all of your relationships, constantly runs regression testing on all of your, not all, but on most of your operational parameters, then you have a much bigger chance of not overlooking a security-relevant issue or a performance-relevant issue than if you have individual people do that. Specifically, if you have business units at the same time adding their own environments and adding hybrid environments, all kinds of complexities to your data center. So the key pain points addressed through analytics, you can see here, and we find that capacity planning is right at the top of that list. And without analytics, capacity planning is basically guessing and praying. And issue prioritization is next. It's very similar. Without analytics, you really don't know the business impact necessarily of what you're doing, because there could be correlations and relationships of variables that are going on behind the scenes that you really cannot understand without a big data approach to IT operations. So analytics basically helps you figure out what to focus on when you need to go and fix an issue before there is a negative business impact. And then comes the prediction of performance bottlenecks, root cause analysis, and prediction of job failures. And all of those items go in line with analytics, automatically understanding in quotes, the business impact of workload automation and taking complexity out of operation management in general. So workload automation in cloud, this is a very interesting chart too. 43% of organizations take advantage of private cloud or public cloud for job scheduling. Now, this number doesn't tell us anything about how serious those companies are about putting production workloads in cloud or DR or what else they're putting down. And the research, when you read the research paper, ultimately you get a lot more fine-grained information on what kind of environments people are putting in the cloud, public and private. But again, this half-hour webinar is roughly an overview, and I can see we are already almost at the end of our half hour. So I'm gonna do a few minutes longer, and then I'm gonna see that we still have some time for questions. So now let's look at those. Let's actually jump ahead a little bit. So when workloads that are tied to, so the reason for workloads not to move to the cloud, when we asked about what is holding you back to benefit from cloud, you can mainly see that workloads are still tied to their individual home. You see 37% are entirely tied to hosts, 53% are somewhat tied to hosts, and only 10% are freely. You can move them freely. And when we ask what companies would need to decouple workloads from physical hosts, you can see the responses to the right. They basically want improved abstraction of job workflows from hosts, basically job virtualization, and better resource pooling on the supply side, virtualization on the demand and resource pooling on the supply side, and then security management and support of business applications are also factors there. And then, we have all of cloud immediate gratification value proposition for business units today. And when we look at workload automation, however, we see that the majority of companies still let their people, their business units, their project managers wait 3 to 7 weeks until workflows can be deployed. So that's a very long time compared to, what they can get when they look for other cloud services. And the business reasons for using private and public cloud in the first place are obviously elasticity, scalability, and this provisioning speed. So companies are really looking to be faster in terms of deploying their workload. And here you can see a quick overview of current capabilities in cloud. You see how people want to benefit from cloud, automatic creation of additional server resources, automatic reclamation of unused resources in general. And when we look at what is desirable in the future, you see, funnily or interestingly enough, automatic reclamation of unused resources is at number 1 for cloud. So in general, why are you not putting your workload in the cloud if you could technically do it? If you didn't have that concern of having workload tied to the host, the main concern is security, obviously. And you see to the left, it's for public cloud, and to the right, for private cloud. For public cloud, security concern is higher, whether that's true or not, it's just what companies think today. Compliance is number 2, cost number 3, performance number 4. And you can see, interestingly enough, they are pretty parallel in the way they are ordered between private and public cloud. So what's interesting is to ask who decides where a workload goes. Public cloud, private cloud, physical, mainframe, where should I run a workload? Strategic decision. And it's actually mostly done by the IT director, which is very interesting, seeing that the study found that IT executives, such as IT directors and CIOs and VPs, the three that you can see at the top, lack a lot of understanding in terms of how workload automation is managed and what the pain points are. Let's jump to mobile management real quick, and you can see we have current mobile management capabilities that companies have today. You can see about half of the companies that we asked have some form of mobile management or at least monitoring capabilities. You can see those in this list. Health and performance monitoring is number one. And then when we asked, what would you like, we see what we have at the right, dashboards for business units is the number one. So business units feel that they need to get more involved, and they feel they need to have more insight into workload automation because they see it is more and more business critical. I don't really understand what's going on, so I need to kind of have a window into workload automation. And another interesting question was, we asked, how would you like to access your workload automation tool mobily? And 50% said web browser, 41% said a mobile app. So I expect personally that this number will go up for the web browser simply because of HTML5 and the capabilities that it has and the cross-platform abilities, you don't have to publish different applications into different stores if you can do most of it in HTML5. That's my personal opinion. From a DevOps perspective, important, we have almost half of the companies, have a self-service portal where developers can access workload automation capabilities through CLI, through API, or through graphical user interface. So here you see it a little bit broken down, the current DevOps capabilities. Developers can access and modify workflows. They can deploy jobs and job workflows, all types of things that you can take a closer look at when you actually see the study in writing. Now, I just want to take a few seconds at least to show the perspective of our individual sponsors, Cisco, IBM, Orsted, and Stonebranch. We went, obviously, through the study results with those individual sponsors and gave them the chance to comment on the empiric data. And I need to really make this very, very short, unfortunately, simply because we're out of time. ORSIP emphasizes the ability to really integrate with business applications without much coding, and ORSIP also enables the easy addition of more agents through their unique peer-to-peer architecture. Unique, I don't use that word lightly, but unique you can read in our radar report for workload automation, where we compared all the different workload automation tools, that ORSIP is truly unique in that respect. All the other factors you can see here, I let you review them when you see the actual study paper. Then we have Stonebranch OpsWise aimed at ease of implementation and ease of use to reduce OpEx. You see the OpsWise dashboard showing workload health and SLA compliance, and in the middle you can see the product audit capabilities, where the product basically tracks the changes that were made to specific jobs and job workflows. And you can basically, at the bottom, you see the workload lifecycle management capabilities that go in line with this, and very much, in sync with our research findings of companies needing increased configuration management and workload lifecycle management capabilities to give the developers better and more secure and more safe, also from a perspective of performance, access to the system. Cisco, very, very interesting, I think, what Cisco is currently doing with Tidal Enterprise Scheduler. And if there's also a white paper from EMA available on Cisco's capabilities there. The big advantage of Tidal Enterprise Scheduler is the software's ability to, out of the box, integrate with a large number of enterprise data sources, of enterprise applications, without any scripting, without writing connectors, pretty much out of the box. And also with other systems, you can see at the bottom left a little bit of an overview, and making this whole process very simple and very, very, very transparent. Finally, I want to say a few words about IBM. IBM is the market share leader in distributed and mainframe environments. And we usually see IBM in very complex deployments with tight SLAs and extensive integration requirements. The study found that IBM Smart Cloud Orchestrator is becoming increasingly popular, and there are interesting synergies between Smart Cloud Orchestrator and the workload automation tool, TWS, Tivoli Workload Scheduler, obviously. So before I open up to questions, and thank you for hanging on with us, before I open up with questions, I just want to say 5 quick sentences about the main findings of the study. First of all, business units put pressure on IT. I think the whole study, when you read the study paper, more than even when you listen to me today, that's what you will find. There is requirements from a development, from a continuous delivery perspective. There is requirements from big data. There's requirements for mobile dashboards. There's all kinds of requirements that are brought in by business units. Then cloud brings elasticity. A surprisingly large amount of companies are already using cloud for workload automation. Numbers much higher than I would have thought. We need to really split and dig into this data and figure out exactly what companies do with this. There will be a detailed analysis in the final study that you can actually read. DevOps is rapidly advancing. You can see we need lifecycle management capabilities. We need audit capabilities. We need configuration management capabilities to keep up and to ensure security and to ensure performance and reliability of our workload automation environment. And mobile management is very, very important to end customers. There were a couple of slides that you saw that showed tremendously high numbers of customers asking, percentage of customers asking for workload for mobile access. And ultimately, finally, analytics is a requirement to lower OpEx. If we keep going with our static thresholding, if we do not get more insight into job workflows and connect those job workflows to business processes very, very transparently, very, very clearly, then we'll spend too much money on keeping the lights on and not enough on new projects and on innovation. All right. Again, thank you for giving me 10 extra minutes. And if somebody has questions, I'm happy to spend a few more minutes now.
Thank you for that great data, Torsten. We are over our 30-minute spot, so I'm going to just take one question today, and I wanted to thank our audience for hanging on with us for a couple extra minutes. Torsten, the question is, why do you think mobile access to workload automation software is critical to so many organizations?
It is an interesting question. There's a lot of layers to that, in my opinion. You know, people that I talk to, they tell me that that's what they'd like to have. That, like, you know, they see they have mobile access in all other areas of their data center and IT operations, just not in workload automation. And in the case they have that mobile access, they really mention that and are really happy about it. You know, there's some vendors who have HTML5 support and who, you know, that you can actually manage properly on your iPad, on your Android phone, or even Windows phone. And I feel it is kind of an emerging requirement that people think they need, and you know they can use. I don't know if it's as critical as some of those numbers suggest, and we'll dive deeper into this data to figure that out a little bit more. I know this is not a short and easy answer, but in my opinion, Again, we are lagging a little bit behind in workload automation for mobile access, and there is pressure to catch up, and people see what other people can do, and we need to see exactly, what the requirements are in that regard, and how business critical this really is. We definitely see it as part of a lot of RFPs, not necessarily as a deal breaker, but as it appears in RFPs, and people are asking for it.
Great. Thank you, Torsten. And I wanted to thank our audience again for joining us today. You will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.